Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome everyone to a new session of Bizagi's Process Professor. Thank you so much everyone for being today with us. My name is Kevin Guerrero, and I am so happy to have a new session of Bizagi's Process Professor. Today, we have a really excited topic. We will be talking about some tips and tricks to use the Excel connector in your projects. This is a great feature that we have in our product. And the idea is that you have a better understanding of how to use this feature, what are maybe some of the guidelines, best practices, and even some tips and tricks that you have to take into account when you are working with Excel connector. And we will see all of that in detail through different examples and different explanations that I will give to you. My name is Kevin Guerrero. I am Bizagi's technical manager. And also I am known as the Bizagi's Process Professor. If this is the first time that you are joining us in a session of Bizagi's Process Professor, let me just give you a quick introduction about the program, how it works, and what are the great benefits for you. This is a program that we have launched 1 year ago, so this is the second year of Bizagi's Process Professor, and our main objective is to provide an environment where our customer, prospects, partners, or in general, the whole community can join this session to just hear from some interesting topics, trending information that we have seen in the market, maybe analyze some of the data that the analysts are putting there, and that maybe we want to understand what is the meaning of that. And in general, that you can hear from someone internally in Bizagi what's happening, where we are going, and even to show you some of the features that we have in our product. So today, we are going to have a little different structure than the one that I'm going to explain here, because in general, what we have done in Bizagi's Process Professor is that we try to follow always this structure. So initially, it will be one general topic discussion. Then it will be a quick demo using any of the products that we have in our cloud platform. And at the end, we're going to have an open space for Q&A. However, today we have a little different structure because we will be talking about some tips and tricks. So what I'm going to do today is every single time that I give you maybe a tip or a trick or a guideline or something that maybe you have to pay attention, I will explain it as a presentation, and then I will just move directly into our product so you will be able to see what I am talking about in terms of the products, right? However, really important, we are going to keep always the last part of our Process Professor, and it is what it will be the Q&A. So at the end, it doesn't matter, right, what is going to happen or what it's the topic that we're covering in the session. So today we're talking about Excel connector, but it doesn't matter when we get into the Q&A section, right? Because at the end, the main idea or the objective with the Q&A is that you can resolve any question that you have in general terms about Bizagi. So if you have a question about something that you are experiencing in your projects, or if you are not sure about something of Bizagi Cloud, or if you want to know something about the latest version, whatever you want, we can discuss on that last part of the Q&A, okay? Now, what we have for today. So today we will be talking about the Excel native connector, right? I don't know if this is going to be the first time for you hearing about this connector. This is an amazing feature that we got in our product. And what I'm going to be discussing today is how the Excel native connector actually fit in the strategy that we have now as a company. So I will start talking about this unifying through orchestration. That is one of the main pillars that now we have in Bizagi, right? We will be talking about also about the feature that actually support or that in one way allow us to do that orchestration that are Bizagi connectors. Then I will be talking about the Bizagi Excel native connector, and finally we will just go to see some tips and tricks on how to use this connector. Okay, so relax and enjoy. Let's start with what we have today, right? So one of the main pillars that we have right now in Bizagi is to be this unifying through orchestration. So we have completely clear and we understand that companies around the world has multiple elements that has to unify for the organization to work or operate as expected. And we're not talking just about systems. We're not talking about just technologies. We're talking that companies at the end are a group of processes, people, systems, in some cases bots, and in a lot of cases, multiple sources of data. So what we want to do with Bizagi is to be that orchestrator that allow you to put all of these elements together to provide or to develop what we have here as mother apps. And what is the meaning of this? That those mother apps can be as simple or as complex as you need it. So we can have apps that can be just for a line of business. So it means it will an app that is going to be used just for a small group of people, a small group of users, all in the same area or in the same department. Or maybe we're talking about an enterprise orchestration app, apps that now involves more people, more area, more systems, more processes, more bots, right? Or at the end, we can even go into the top level. That is when we're talking about our mission critical operation apps, the ones that actually generate the money for the organizations, the core business, the mission critical, the ones that actually matters the more. So if we want to be this main orchestrator for you, if we want to help you to unify all the systems, all the people, all the bots, all the data through the orchestration, we need to provide some tools for you to do it. And one of the most powerful ways on how we can help you and support this is actually through the use of connectors and integrations. In Bizagi, we offer multiple ways on how you can integrate your external systems. From one way, or from one side, we have everything that are the pre-built connectors, pre-built widgets, and even process accelerators. All of that are elements that you can use to accelerate your automation, but at the same time, to integrate with different systems. We have there elements that are ready to use. You just need to find which is the one that you want to use, which is actually the system that you want to connect, select the connector that is available, add it into your project, and then include it in every step or in the process that you want to use, right? On the other hand, we have what's called native connectors. When we're talking about native connectors, we're talking about the RPA ones, the ones that belongs to RPA providers as UiPath, Blue Prism, and Automation Anywhere. And on the other hand, the ones that are native connectors of different systems. That there, we have three options: SAP, Excel connector, and we have Form Recognizer from Microsoft Azure. But also, at the same time, we understand that sometimes maybe you have really specific requirements, and because of that, it will be required for you even to build your own connector. So that's why we offer the option for you to build, test, and define your connector directly in our tool, where you will have the option to start the creation of the connector from scratch, or if you have some templates, you can create it from there, or if you have some descriptors as RAML or as on OpenAPI, you can create it from there, or if you have template from OCR technologies as AB Flexi Capture, you can create it from there. You test it directly in the tool, and then you just use it really quickly and really simple as that. And then we have the native connectors. What is the main difference between the native connectors and the ones that maybe you have to build or the ones that you have to download from the connector exchange? We call these three elements, SAP, Form Recognizer, and Excel, as native connectors, mainly because every single time that you start a project from scratch, we are going to offer these connectors directly, always by default, right? So it means they are there. You just need to set up which is the elements that you want to use, but you don't have to download it. You don't have to install it. They are going to be always there. And today, our main session is going to be about the Excel connector. So let's start seeing the tips and tricks, the recommendations, and everything that you need to learn to actually run and use your Excel connector as an expert. And today I will be using this amazing analogy of the MacGyver, right? So I hope that you remember how this character, right, use, simple stops or daily stops, like, like a paper clip or a bubble gum or a match. And then he is able to create a bomb or to liberate from a prison or whatever. So these are going to be little tricks on how we can actually use those tools that maybe we use every single day that maybe are really normal, but how we can take it to the next level and actually be an expert as MacGyver, right? And I want to start with the basics, right? So let's start from the basics. If maybe you have never heard about what is this, what is a connector, what is a Visagi native connector, let's start from the basic. And the basic is, what is this, right? At the end. So at the end, the native Excel connector was created because we were able to identify that even though that customers around the world are moving through this digitalization or automation of processes or try to take out manual activities, even if they are in the top level of maturity, one of them we are going to have always spreadsheets, right? Always. So it doesn't matter how mature, how big, how small, how tiny. It doesn't matter the type of company, it doesn't type, the industry, they always have spreadsheets. And what we have seen also is that those spreadsheets and those Excel files at the end are really powerful, are documents that someone already sit down, define, think about what is needed, and create all the logic behind of that. And they have a lot of formulas, they have a lot of logic, they have a lot of lookups, they have what if error, a lot of intrinsic logic that we prefer not to start again or to recreate that logic in Visagi. And instead of that, we want is just to reuse it because it will save us time, it will give us much power, and actually it will make feel that people that were working in those spreadsheets, actually the value will not be just thrown into the trash, but instead of that, we're going to reuse it. So at the end, the main logic or the simple way on how we can understand how this native Excel connector works is we have a process. At some point in the process, I want to take information that I have on Visagi in one of my processes and just write it directly into a spreadsheet. In Excel, the Excel is going to do all the magic. It's going to read, it's going to calculate, it's do whatever it's needed. And once that Excel finish the execution of that logic, what we're going to do is we are going to go to Excel and read the results from one particular cell over there, right? This is the really, really big picture that we have when we're talking about this. So now, let's start with our tricks, right? Or let's start with a guideline. Let's start with best practices, with things that you have to take into account. And the first one is, guys, let's stay safe, right? And when I mean let's stay safe, it's let's keep completely clear in everyone's mind what we have to take into account when we're working with the Excel files or with the Excel connector. Because even though this is a powerful feature, this is a powerful functionality, and you can take a lot of advantage of this one, there are a couple things that we need to take into account as well. This one. So first one, Excel connector cannot run macros, right? So you can have the most powerful Excel file without any macros, and we will just go and add it to our process, no problem. But if you have any macro that requires that someone click on a button or you do a shortcut on the keyboard or do whatever, macros cannot be run through Excel connector. So that's the first sign to keep safe. The second one, which type of files we support? XLS, XLXX, XLSB, right? Those are the supported files. Please be careful on the way on how you are going to use this Excel file in terms of loading information. We will see in a following tip or a next trick that you can load information from an Excel file. However, this is not the main objective, right? Not through the Excel connector. If you want to load large amounts of information for your entities, for your parameter entities, or a list of users, or something, there are other ways on how you can achieve this, but not through the native Excel connector, okay? Take into account that it is recommended that you use files with less than 14 megabytes, right? This is a lot in terms of an Excel file, right? And the advice here is that if you go over this value, maybe you can start identifying some decrease in the performance or even in the end user experience. Why? Because at the end, it means that maybe you are doing a lot of logic in the Excel file. And keep in mind that at the end, Visagi is the front end, is where everyone is working. And if the Excel file, right, is doing a lot of logic, but the end user is not able to see the result soon, they are not going to say, oh, it's the Excel file. They are going to say, oh, it's Visagi the one that is slow. So our advice is, if we keep it before this, it's fine. You can maybe do some tests if you want to go a little over, but try to keep it on these parameters, right? Be really careful with the data types that you set up or that you configure in your Excel files, right? If you are not careful with this one, this can generate a lot of problems at the moment that you are writing information on the file or reading information from the file, right? And finally, everything that here in Bizagi we have done in terms of this Excel connector, it's based or used as a base, right? Something that is a library published and available by the same Microsoft that is called as Post, right? So that library, that API at the end has some limitations. Some formulas are not supported, right? I will say that the most common ones are supported. However, there are maybe some really specific that are not supported. So in case you want to see and be completely sure that a formula it's supported or not, you can go and review what is available on that as Post library. Okay? Now, first great advice. Let everyone be an expert in their field, right? Don't let everyone just jump into one field or into the next. What I am meaning with this one, it's Bizagi is really good when we're talking about the orchestration. And we're really good to help you to do this unified through orchestration, to put together people, processes, system, data, bots, and everyone to work together in a really synchronized way, right? So we are the orchestra director. And Excel is really good when we're talking about calculations, right? When you want to do this hard logic, when you want to have multiple sheets and then in every single sheet have a list of values and every single value then do a VLOOKUP or do a if or whatever. The Excel is really powerful in that. So let everyone be an expert on their field. Don't try to let this Excel to orchestrate systems, and let's try to avoid to write hard coding rules with Excel. Can we replicate the logic that we have in Excel in Bizagi? I will say that some of them, yes, for sure, but probably will take us a lot, right? It will be too difficult to just rewrite the logic that we have in an Excel file just by coding. So let's try to avoid that. Let's use the power of Excel, and when we make them work together, it will be much better, right? This advice or this first tip is because we have seen customers that try to let, Excel to group multiple sources of data, right? Or to read information from multiple databases, right? Or try to rewrite hard coding rules that can be really simplified if we use an Excel file. So let's keep this concept completely clear. Let's respect the boundaries between each other, and in that way, we will take much more advantage, right? Second one, if we want to use the Excel native connector, the first thing that we will have to do is for sure to have an Excel file. An Excel file that we want to use or that we want to integrate in one of our processes in Bizagi. But those Excel files must meet some minimum conditions. And those are, they can be as powerful as you want. It means you can use as many formulas, calculations, whatever you want in Excel, you can use it, right? But at the same time, they must be simple and easy to understand. Because if not, it will be really difficult to know where to go and read the information or where to go and set up the parameters that we need, right? So this is the first advice. So one of the things that I want to show you here, it is something like this. In different organizations around the world, organization has even some standards and best practices when using Excel files. What it means with this is that sometimes they even define color standards for different things, right? Inputs, outputs, revenue, expenses. They have multiple standards to define all of that. If you don't have those standards in your organization, then it's fine, but then try to define the one for your own, the one for your document. Because it doesn't matter how powerful your Excel file it is, if it is not clear for you to know how to use it or which information to put it, or at least give a description. So here I have some examples of some files that I want to show you. And I want to highlight the point of what I'm talking there. And is, look, here I have these files. So the first one that I have on this point is one tool, one Excel file that allow me to just identify if a particular customer has risk or not when they are requesting or when they are asking for let's say new products in a bank, right? And take a look that if we analyze indeed this file, it has a lot of sheets. So I have one sheet where I have all the different values and colors, then what it will be the result of the simulator, then what it will be, I don't know, some list of controls of information that we have there, then some different activities, some cities. So there are a lot of logic here, right? If we keep it like this and we give this file to someone that then they have to integrate it in Bizagi, it will be really difficult to know where we have to go. What is the sheet that we need to put? Where I can put the, I don't know, the activity code for the information. Should I just put it on the first one or should I just put it on the sheet called activities? Where I have to do. So that's why what we say here is it doesn't matter how complex or how many information you got on your spreadsheet, try to keep it simple, at least in the place where you are going to do all the calculations. So take a look that here, even though that I have all these sheets and all this information, we have created one that is the assessment sheet that is clean, simple, and easy to understand. Where we have defined some standards. Everything that is white is where we're going to have inputs. So it means that then if I want to add this file into Excel, it will be really easy for the one that is doing the configuration to know that something has been added into the B4, something has been added into B6, something into B8, and something into B10. So now we are sure and we have completely clear the information that we got there. And also we have defined that in this row, right, the D12 is where we are going to get the result. And take a look that this one has all the calculations behind. Every time that I change one of these elements over here, it is going to start changing the information, have some color, some other information. So it has all the logic that actually we want and all the logic that we require, but it's simple for us to read and to understand. In the same way, I have another file that has or that follows the same logic. Here, this is a file that we want to use to simulate some calculations when you have a loan, right? And take a look that this is an amortization table, right? So this can be as long and as big as we want, but again, we want to keep clean and clear how the Excel file is going to work. In our case, we want to keep a simple standard that is everything that are the blue are inputs, everything that is the red is going to be the output. So it means if I want to use this file in one of my processes, in one of my projects, I'm going to know that in these rows, right, H4, H7, and H8 is where I have to send information, and then from L4 and L5 is where I will obtain the results. This is the first big advice. We have seen really powerful files, really amazing formulas, calculation, really complicated calculation, but then it's a mess. And it's so difficult to understand where to read the information, where to send data, that it will be much better to redesign that point. So this is the first advice or the first trick that we got there. And it's keep simple, powerful, but at the same time, easy to understand files when you are creating this one, right? The second one. So now we have a paper clip, right? How we can make, or what we can do, or what we can achieve with this paper clip as MacGyver. So it's keep completely clear and understand what you have to do when you want to set up your Excel connectors, right? So the first thing is the one that we just saw, clear and simple Excel files. But now the second one, it will jump directly when you are working in your Bizagi. And you need to be sure that you follow some basic advice here. So it's, you need to upload your file, you need to give a meaningful name, define some sequence of actions, and then be careful with some data types. So what's the meaning of this? The meaning of this is that when you are in Bizagi, Bizagi's native Excel connector is available through the expert view in the external system section, and here we got our Excel native connector. every single time that we want to add or that we want to select a new connector or set up a new connector, we can just click on select a new connector. The first thing that we need to do is to select the file that we want to use. So let's suppose that I want to select this one. I'm going to add it. And the first advice, again, this is maybe something that I mentioned before in the best practices run-up that I did last year, but is please give meaningful names, right? So if you are going to use this Excel connector for simulate loans, then give it a good name, right? So loan, simulator, Excel, right? Something that allows you to identify and understand completely clear what we're talking about here, right? Now, you need to define actions. And here is where actually things are going to start getting much more interesting, right? Because it is really important for us to understand the different options that are available when we're working with Bizagi. So it means when we're talking about actions, we are going to see that Bizagi will offer us 5 different actions that you can use at any time. You can write in a cell. So just go directly and write information in some particular cells. Read information from a cell. Go and read information from one or multiple cells, right? Now, read a whole range of information. So not just one cell, but maybe a whole range, right? A whole column, a whole group of information that you got in a table, right? Write in range. So not just writing one cell, but maybe write a whole table. And finally, filter range. So what's the meaning of that filter range? Is that you will be able to read information, but instead of reading all the information that you got, you will be able to go directly and read information that meet some specific options, right? Or some specific conditions. So you can filter the information that you will get. How this is going to be reflected when you are working in our product? So mainly, every single time that you are creating and setting up your actions, you are going to have it like this. So you can have, and this is really important, for every single connector, as many actions as you want. Take a look that in this example, I am doing, or I am running 2 different actions. First, I am going to write the inputs, and then I am going to read the results. So here, my first one is an action that it will be write, and I am going to say that I am going to write information in these 3 different cells. For every single cell, take a look that here we're just putting the information here. So amount, mounts, and interest rates is the same that we got here. For every single element there, please be really careful with the data type that you are defining here. So I am going to just write that information that it will be an integer, or that it will be a double, or that it will be a decimal, or that it will be a date. Be careful with this one. And then take a look that you can actually just have the opportunity to select 2 different things. It can be specifically the cell coordinate. So here we're putting H4, that at the end is nothing different than this one, H4, where we're going to write the amount. Or if you use the feature that you got in Excel, where you can give it names to the different cells. For example, this one, I can just call it, I don't know, amount, right? If I give this name to this cell, I think I just call it correctly, it's this one. If I just call this one, then instead of selecting the cell coordinate, you will be able to select the name, and it will automatically show you where is the name that you want, right? What is really important is that you will always, or that the actions will be executed always in the order that you have here, and you can change the order, just dragging and drop according to your needs, right? So this is really important. The range actions will allow you to actually, again, not just execute one single or like one single cell, but actually a whole group of information. So if we're talking about the range actions, what we will be able to get is information like this one. So I am going to be able to, again, upload my file. After I upload my file, I can give it a name. And then let's suppose that I just want to read from a range. Let's suppose that I am going to use this file where I have some information here about some products, right? I have 2 options. I can say that the range of my file or the data that I want to use is from for example, G10 that is this one, to L15. So when I am here, so I will say G11 to L15. And it will automatically identify the number of columns that we have. And it will automatically ask me if in that range you have headers, and if the headers is in the first row or in the second one or whatever. And then you have to select every single column that you got on that file. So by default, you can add it one by one. And you can start saying, okay, my first column is product. My second one is unit price. My third one is this. Or you can just ask the feature to autofill the columns with the ones that they identify. And then what you will have to do is just to give it a name. So you say, this is product name. Then this is going to be, let's say, quantity, then unit price, and then you select one by one. So now here, we're not talking just one cell. We're talking about a full range of cells. And in the same way, if I don't want to just read all the data that we have there, we can use the filter range option. Where again, let's suppose that now I don't want to put the coordinates. I have in my spreadsheet that everything that we have in this range has a name that is called product list. How I see this one? Because I have it here into the name manager, and I know that this is product list, and that the product list actually is this whole section that I just have select. So in my spreadsheet, Bizagi will identify that. I say I want to use the range name, select the range name that I want, and then I am going to be able to create filters. How? Every single column will have different types. So let's suppose this one is, I don't know, an integer, and then I can apply the filters. So when this column is equal to, this is quantity, so I can select specific quantities, or I can say things as simple as when it's greater than 20, and I just want to see, for example, the products that in this example is, I don't know, Pepsi and Doritos, right? So I can do the filters in that way once that I am going to read the information, and I am not going to read all the information, but just the values that meet that filter, right? So the second big tip here, or the second big trick, is understanding in detail every single step that you have to do to complete your Excel configuration. So upload the file, yes, but then give it a proper name, then define your actions, and take into account that you can create as many actions as you want, and that those actions will be executed in the order that you define here. That you can change the order just doing dragging and drop. That the write cell and the read cell will allow you to just manipulate individual cells of your Excel file, but that the ranges, we're now talking about multiple columns and multiple rows at the same time, either to read or either to write. Okay? So this is really important for us. Now, what is the next tip that we have when we're talking with this one? So this part that I just showed you is the configuration of your Excel file. So it's the moment where you give to Bizagi the spreadsheet that you want to use, select if you want to write, read, range, or filter, right? But so far, you have not used the connector yet, right? So far, the connector is not being used by any process at any point. So the next one is that you need to decide where you want to use that connector. And in Bizagi, you have mainly two options. You can use it in our wizard view. We have the 7 steps to create an app, and you can use it in the step number 3, where you define your forms, or in the step number 4, that is where you define your business rules. You have to select which is the best place that you want to use and understand the implication of each of these ones, right? So if you decide to use it in the step number 3, let's suppose that we are going to use it just in a form, then what it implies there? It implies that we will need to locate the form where that element, where that connector will be used. So we will have to open a form, and the use of that connector will be through what it is called in Bizagi Forms, actions and validations. So the menu that you got here on the top, right? And this is something that you will be able to execute through the actions. So here you will have the opportunity to define some conditions. In this simple example, I have a button that it says when someone click that button, then I want that you execute your Excel connector. And here is really important that you do the mapping of the information correctly. Why? Because in the definition, we just say that we want to write in the cell 4, H4, or I want to write in L5. But here is where I am going to say what I am going to write in those cells. So we can use here the mapping information that we have in here, navigate the whole data model, and then do the mappings according to what I need. This is a read action, so I'm not going to do anything at all, but take a look that on the, for example, on the output, I am getting the information and I am putting information directly in my Bizagi project directly. So how this is going to look like when at the end we're running our applications, something like this. So I'm going to show you 2 different configurations and then you can see where it will be or what it will be best for you. So if you decide to use the execution using, for example, buttons, it will look like this. So I have a form, I have information, I can change this value as many times as I want, and then only when I click on the simulate payments is that I am going to invoke the connector and I am going to change the data or the calculations that we got there. Instead of that, you can also go through the other option, and in the other option is when everything is dynamic. It means when the end user doesn't have to click on anything at all, and it's going to just say, okay, I'm going to change this for 60,000. It automatically calculates, it automatically will give me the new value that we have there. Let's suppose that we don't want this for 24 months, but instead of that for 60, let's suppose that the interest rate is going to be now 0.02, and then all the information will be changed dynamically, right? So it will be within a form through the actions and validations, and you can either select if you want an interaction from the end user, for example, clicking a button, or if you want that automatically with any of these, in this example, when any of these values change, you want to automatically invoke the connector. That's one way. Now, if instead of that, we don't want to do it in a form, and instead of that, we want to use it in our business rules, then what it will be in the implication there? Then what it will happen at that point is that we will have to just go into the step number 4, where we got our activity actions. We can select where we want to invoke the connector, and here on the exit, we are going to find the option of the Excel connector invocation. What it is going to imply here is that any user will see on the moment or at the moment that he enters into the screen all the information, or when it exits. So you can decide that the execution of the connector happens at any point or at any moment that you want. Okay? So really important to identify if you want to use your connectors, your Excel connector directly in a form or within a business rules, right? So this is going to be the options that we got into this level, right? Now, one of the last tips, what happened if now you are more like an expert, right? Like if you are more like a genius, if you have more experience, and not only in the use of Bizagi, but also in the use of Excel. And you have identified that even that your files are simple, easy to understand, and clear, right? That is one of the first tips that we have here. You have identified that the behavior can change and can be dynamically according to the business situation, right? So what's the meaning of this? That if I am offering, for example, a loan, I can offer to my customer different type of payments over the loan. I can offer the option for they to have a fixed payment, right? Or we can offer them to have a fixed principal repaid, right? So 2 different options, different calculations, and different spreadsheets when we're working there, different tabs within the spreadsheet. So for those behaviors, the tip or the trick is that Bizagi has one option that are advanced views. The advanced views will open for you even more options where you will be able to now set up or configure more opportunities there. As which ones? As change dynamically the rate, the values, the cell or the coordinate cell where the information must be mapped, or even the sheet name. So if you see here, when we're working or when we are seeing here in the not advanced view, the simple view, this is what we will see. It is, give me just what is the amount, what is the month, and what is the interest rate. Just tell me where it's the values that I have to put. But if you enable the advanced view, then we go into something much more complex. And that advanced view will give me the opportunity to do all of this. Something that is really important for us to pay attention here is this one. The sheet name, because it implies that I can even select which is the sheet name that I want to use for my calculations, right? And also that now you have the opportunity for every single input or even for every single output to give the value or even give the cell. So if I know that the cell will change, I can set up directly there. How that can be used directly in a real situation? Something like this. So imagine that at this point, I have the same example where we're working or where we're talking about into this option or into this point. And it is, I have a loan simulator. I am giving loans to my customers, and I have the option for them to have always the same payment, right? The point here is that in that payment will be distributed between interest and the rebate or the principal rebate. So for some customers, this can be a good option. And for other ones, what they want to have, it doesn't matter that the payment changes month by month, but what they want is that they want to have always the same principal rebate. So what happened here? Even though that is a logic that is quite similar, I cannot put together those logics in just one single sheet. I need to have separate sheets, and I need the flexibility that once that I am using one option or the other one, I can just go directly and use the sheet that I want. So for those scenarios, one more time, what we are going to have here is in the configuration of our Excel connector over this particular point, once that I complete the actions, once that I upload the file, once that I have all of this, when I decide to use it, that is, in this case, take a look that I am using this in a form, I am going to have now the opportunity to just go directly and enable that advanced behavior and do the mappings according to the new conditions that I am working there. So in this example, this is what I want now. So this is my loan simulator. I have enabled the advanced view, and once that I enable my advanced view, I am going to just go directly to have more options in the corresponding mapping. So here I have the information of the type of loan that they want to use stored in one value that I have here. And I can just map that information directly with this one that is going to be my sheet name. So this loan payment type is what it will be defined if I want to use the fixed payment or the fixed principal rebate and dynamically change from one sheet to the other one here. What it implies is that once that in my execution, I am going to have now the opportunity to directly, in this simple example, from a drop-down list, say I want to see what it will happen if I have a principal rebate and what it will be the implication of the interest that I am going to pay. So if you take a look here, if I have a principal rebate, these are going to be the interest that I am going to pay at the end. But if I just have a fixed payment, take a look that I am going to pay even like $7,000 more just on interest, changing that little detail. So with this, now I have a much more dynamic behavior in the way on how I am working in my spreadsheets. And now I open the possibility to use as many sheets as I want according to the business condition that I am working. Okay? So that's the order. And I think that's the last tip that we are going to have actually on our session today, right? So with this, we get into the end of these tips and tricks for the use of Excel connector.